That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, we are getting closer. It's Tuesday of LSU week, rivalry week, one of Alabama's rivalries. Despite the fact they are no longer a permanent opponent, it is still a big deal to a lot of Alabama fans. And this is another opportunity. LSU is a good football team. They've had their struggles. Obviously, Brian Kelly fell short of expectations. He gets fired, but then that creates a situation where you really don't know what to expect. We talked about that a little bit yesterday, but we're going to be talking about Alabama's, defense going against LSU's offense, and then we're also going to be talking about Alabama's offense going against LSU's defense. So before we do that, like always, I want to get your overall thoughts on this game, on Alabama coming out of the bye week, on what you think about LSU. Just any direction you want to take it, feel free, because I do think it's an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I hate that this game's sort of going away. I think, especially since Alabama hired Nick Saban, I think this rivalry really took off. It's always kind of been there as Alabama's, I hate ranking it kind of, I don't mean to diminish LSU, who might consider Alabama their number one rival. I get that. But I think hiring Saban kind of moved this rivalry to a whole new level. Now that Saban's gone, maybe it kind of goes back to what it used to be, which was a really cool, fun Gulf Coast matchup, but they won't be an annual opponent. So that's interesting. But this game, the thing that stands out to me about this game is the firing of Brian Kelly. I mean, to me, so much of Alabama's number 4. Alabama's in the playoff race. I think Alabama will be ranked 4th tonight in the playoff rankings. So Alabama's 4th, solidly in the playoff. LSU's out of the playoff. But to me, LSU is the bigger story. And I'll say simply because they have an extremely high-profile head coach search underway. They lost the coach. I think X's and O's wise, and what we're about to get into the weeds into, Clint, here, is that LSU is going to look different. You have 8 games of tape to watch, 8 games, and you don't know how much of that 8 games is helping you prepare for what's coming. Who knows what's coming Saturday? I think you've got to prepare a game plan based on the 8 games of tape. But you got to be ready from the first snap of the game to start making major adjustments. And because I fully expect LSU to look a little different on offense. It might not be to the naked eye. I don't know if all of us sitting in the stands or in the press box, I don't know that all of us will be able to literally point and say, boy, they weren't doing that. I don't know that it'll be that obvious, but to the coaches and the detail people, I think there will be lots of wrinkles, lots of new things, lots of adjusting on the fly, because you got to, not only did they replace Brian Kelly, they fired Joe Sloan. They're bumping up Al's Atkins, who's been coaching the tight ends. He's going to be the play caller because he's got experience doing that. Frank Wilson's going to implement some level of changes, maybe as drastic as seeing Michael Van Buren at quarterback. Maybe. So I think for Alabama to win Saturday, Clint, first and foremost, how does the defense adjust on the fly to what are clearly going to be some tweaks and changes by the new LSU staff?
Yeah, I think that you raise great points, and that's the number one thing for Alabama fans is that you got to understand when we're previewing this, we're somewhat going in blind relative to, it's almost like a season opener in a way where you have no idea what to expect from LSU. You do in the sense of, like I said in the last episode or the last show, you do from like who they have from a player perspective. But as far as usage, like I feel like the run game, LSU would get away from that. There's this newfound commitment to it. According to Frank Wilson, they're going to try to run the football. And granted, I was looking back at some of their rushing tape yesterday, and I think they can run the football a little bit more than the numbers would indicate. I also thought there for a while Alabama was running the football a little bit better than the numbers would indicate. But for whatever reason, and it might have been just Garrett Nussmeier and the fact that they wanted to sling the football around, you got a bunch of playmakers, whether it be at wide receiver, whether it be at tight end. And so maybe that had something to do with it. It's funny because in some ways, as you talk about it, it doesn't look the same by any means. But the way in which you talk about it, you can make an argument the same for Alabama. a bunch of playmakers, a quarterback that can sling it around. It's kind of understandable why at the first opportunity you kind of get away from the run game, because you can make the quick passing game an extension of your run game and get it out to the perimeter and make their defensive backs come up and have to tackle, try to get them in isolated situations as much as possible. Like, these are things that LSU wants to do and will do as well. But I think that LSU is going to commit to running the football a lot more. And someone made a comment yesterday on our video and said, the way Clint's talking about it, just, hey, make sure you shut down the run game like it's optional, even though Alabama has struggled to stop the run. I think Alabama has been better at stopping the run as of late. They're giving up chunk plays. It's causing some issues, and you want to limit those explosive plays from LSU's offense. Don't get me wrong, but I think that on a down in, down out basis, it actually has not been terrible.
I agree.
And so, and granted, they're 100% correct in the sense of, it's not just, snap your fingers and, the run game's gone. They haven't been able to run the football at times, and they have seemed to be willing to get away from it quickly when it hasn't worked. So commit to stopping the run as best that you can. And if you can limit it or stop it, then I wouldn't be surprised, even though there's been a coaching change, including play caller, if they put the ball in Nussmeier's hands a little bit more. But here's the problem for LSU. If you do that, I think that's a recipe for disaster, which is why in some ways I do think LSU will remain committed to the run game, whether it's effective or not. And that is because LSU's offensive line has not been great. And Tyree Adams was their starting left tackle. He had an ankle injury against Vanderbilt, missed a majority of that game. They bring in DJ Chester, who had played some at center, but he was primarily a tackle. He had got destroyed against Vanderbilt. He got destroyed against A&M. Very quickly got benched against A&M. And then the guy that they brought in for him, which was a true freshman, Carius Kern, he is potentially going to miss Saturday's game as well. So they might have to go back to DJ Chester. And just to show you how bad Chester was, he's allowed 10 pressures and 2 sacks in 3 games playing left tackle. He was actually pretty good at center, but he allowed 2 pressures on 3 pass blocking snaps against Clemson in the season opener. So that's as bad of a ratio as it gets, 66.7% pressure rate. Then he allowed 8 pressures and 2 sacks against Vanderbilt and Texas A&M, and 5 pressures versus A&M came on 9 pass blocking snaps. 5 pressures, 9 pass blocking snaps. So of the 3 games that he's played, and where it was not a ton, in those games total, he has, played 12 pass blocking snaps, and he's allowed 7 pressures and 2 sacks. That is absurdly bad. I don't care. I mean, you could talk about Chris Owens. You could talk about, some of the problems that fans have with Caden Proctor or Wilkin Formby or Elijah Pritchett or whoever. Pick whoever you want to. You're not going to find rates that bad. That is as bad as probably I've ever seen, and it is entirely possible due to injuries. We know Tyree Adams is not playing. He got tightrope surgery, and he is going to continue to be out. But if Kern is unable to play and you got to go back to Chester, that's really, really bad for LSU. Plus, you've got Weston Davis at right tackle, who has allowed 25 pressures in 7 games. So a little under 4 per game. So they're at both tackle spots. They have really, really struggled. And with the way Jan Zapier has come on strong as an edge, and LT Overton has a lot of disruptive ability and has done pretty well, despite the statistics not really reflecting it. I think Alabama could have some success on Saturday getting after Garrett Nussmeier if they earn those opportunities.
You certainly hit upon 2 key players for Alabama on Saturday, being Jan Zapier and LT Overton. I mean, I think for Alabama to sort of, I would like to see the defense, and this isn't breaking new ground. I would like to see the defense move from what I think has been very good. That's what how I describe the Alabama defense in 2025 so far. Very good. Not better than good, not elite, but better than good. So I'm going to stick with very good. I think they can get to elite. I don't think they're too far from that. Like you said about the run game, they've given up chunk plays that have skewed the stats. Those chunk plays. On a down-to-down basis, they've been pretty good. All you have to do is eliminate the chunk plays, and I realize that's not something you say. That's much harder to do than just say it out loud. But I don't think the defense against the run's been terrible. Defense against the pass has been really good, especially when you consider Alabama's not really a sack machine. I mean, they do okay getting after the quarterback, but they're not dominant or elite when it comes to sack numbers. But the defense against the pass has been very good. Now, I think it's because Alabama does a good job of getting pressure on the quarterback and forcing the quarterback to do something he didn't plan to do or something he doesn't want to do. They're very good at that. You're not far from being an elite defense. And there's a few players that I think can help get Alabama just, to tweak it from very good to elite. LT Overton, first and foremost. Got to be better than he's been. He's been good. He's been fine. I think he's better than that. I think he's a better player than what we saw games 1 through 8. Yanze Pierre is just getting comfortable as being an every week starter that plays 50, 60, 70 snaps. He's just getting to be that guy. Justin Jefferson's had a really good year. Deontay Lawson now appears to me to be healthier than he was in September and early October. So Deontay's the guy. And in the defensive backfield, Dijon Lee's a new starter. He should be getting better every week. And I would like to see Keon Sabb step it up as a playmaker. I think he does his job. There's two ways you can really categorize a good defender: a do-your-job guy and a playmaker. And they've all got to be do-your-job guys, or the defense is going to stink, right? They've all got to, at minimum, do your job. And I think Keon's one of those guys. But I think there's a next level, which to me is playmaker. Be the guy that makes the plays that decide the outcome of the game. And I think Keon can be one of those guys. We just hadn't seen a lot of it from him yet, games 1 through 8. So I think the defense is so close, Clint. They're very good. I'm not being critical. They're very good. I appreciate the job Kane Womack has done with this defense. But I still think there's some elevation that's still there. And these offenses, LSU struggled on offense. Oklahoma hasn't been great since the Mateer thumb injury on offense. And Auburn has been a mess on offense. That's an opportunity for the defense to move from very good to elite and put up good numbers and end the regular season a defense that me and you agree that's one of the 10 best defenses in the country. They're not there yet, but I think they can close that strong.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think they've got the recipe, and they've had the recipe all year, and they've had their struggles at times, but I think that they've been good in the ways that they've needed to be good. And I mean, outside of the Florida State game, and that was just bad all the way around. The offense wasn't doing really anything to help the defense. The defense was doing nothing to help the offense. It just was poor football all the way around. But since then, I feel like the defense has done a pretty good job. And as we've said many times on this show, complementary football, that's the style. That's what's winning these football games. And I think you continue to see that. And in the critical situations, they're doing a good job of stepping up and making plays when they need to, whether that be offensively or defensively. That's another key part of this. Now, I like what you said about Michael Van Buren, because it is interesting. They're not starting Michael Van Buren, or I would be absolutely floored if they did. But Garrett Nussmeier, at this point, he's really struggled. Now, granted, I mean, he's a good deep ball thrower. His entire game is built on rhythm and timing, good processor, both pre and post snap, accurate ball placement, anticipation on the throws, solid, but not an elite arm. But the problem is that I don't think, compared to what we've seen him at his best, I don't think he's seeing things as well and processing things as well as maybe he has, whether it be last year or even earlier this year. And with his gunslinger type of mentality, where he'll really try to challenge windows that aren't really there, the turnovers have been a problem for him. And with Alabama, now granted, a lot of Alabama's turnovers, a huge chunk, have been forcing fumbles and getting recoveries, but they also have some guys that can get their hands on the football and intercept the ball. And so, that's something to at least keep an eye on. I think that the tackles, LSU's tackles against Alabama's edges, whether they be the Bandit or the Wolf, I think that's a critical piece of this as far as the offensive line are concerned. But I think the interior guys are equally as important, because when you can get Garrett Nussmeier off of his spot and, you can really start to see him have some problems as far as decision making, drifting back in the pocket, not being mechanically sound. It's like I wouldn't say he falls apart, but to the max extent that Garrett Nussmeier will, he falls apart in those situations. So if you've got the Tim Keenans, you got the James Smiths, the London Simmons, Edric Hill, these guys that can cause havoc or problems, whether it be collapse in the pocket on Nussmeier or creating some disruption by beating, the interior guys up front. That, I think, in tandem with the tackles and the fact that LSU's tackles have really struggled in pass protection, I think you can create a lot of negative situations for LSU and really put them in a lot of binds or situations. So I say all that to say the reason that stopping the run is important is I think they're going to commit to the run. And even if Alabama's doing a pretty good job of stopping it, they're going to continue to try to hammer away at it. But you've got to earn as many of those opportunities to exploit that offensive line as you possibly can, because if you can do that, I think Alabama can win and win pretty soundly.
I love how you phrase that, because you can sort of see this game being Alabama and LSU both insistent on running the ball, while neither one has been good at it all year. I mean, the rush offense numbers for LSU and Alabama are strikingly similar. I mean, these are two teams that normally run the ball really well, but it's been a struggle for both. That said, I'm with you 100%. I think LSU is going to come out determined to pound the ball with Caden Durham and Harlan Berry. We got to remember, the running back coach is now the head coach. Those are his guys. He knows them better than he knows anybody on the roster. I think he's going to want to win with his guys. They're going to be committed to run the football, and I commend Ryan Grubb for being stubborn about running the football at Alabama. It hasn't worked great, and we can go into, I'm sure we'll spend a lot of the upcoming offseason discussing it, but we'll talk about why it doesn't work great. But Alabama's been pretty stubborn about it, and I like it because I think that's what's helped the pass game. When you abandon it, when you're just like, we can't run the ball, so just cut it out, you've put the whole thing on Ty Simpson. And that's just, gosh, this is just his 9th ever start coming up this Saturday at the college football level. So I'm with you. I think they're going to try to run the ball. That's going to pressure Alabama's interior, especially Tim Keenan, James Smith, and those 3 inside linebackers that play a lot of snaps: Hill Green, Justin Jefferson, Deontay Lawson, Yonze Pierre improving. You pointed this out on the tape. Really enjoy your tweets about it. But Yonze Pierre has improved as a run defender since he's been playing. And I think it's been a good example of, you can become a better player at practice. Most of them do. You can become better. But the true steroid shot of development to rocket your development is playing every week. And I think playing every week and playing as many snaps as he does has really improved Yonze Pierre in terms of all the other stuff, why he wasn't the starter in the first place, because Quay Russaw was better at setting the edge. He was better as a run defender. There's 3 directions to move when you're a stand-up linebacker: downhill, which generally means chasing the quarterback; laterally, which is the run game; and backwards, which is dropping into pass coverage or playing in pass coverage. I think Yonze, when he became the starter, was really good at the downhill stuff, maybe even better than Quay. But the lateral and the backward stuff, that's why Quay was the starter. But Yonze, I think, has made tremendous strides in those areas. And when Quay comes back, and it could be as soon as Oklahoma week, when Quay Russaw's back, could be. I anticipate them sharing the job because Yonze has played so well. This is a good game for him. You went over the LSU tackle situation, Clint. Some games are built for Alabama accumulating sacks. Others aren't. You aren't going to sack Diego Pavia. I mean, that's just not a sackable guy or offense. Even Missouri ran the ball so much and had Bo Perbula, an athletic quarterback. You weren't going to get a lot of sacks there. But Tennessee, you could, and you saw Alabama respond. LSU, you can too. You can sack Nussmeier. Alabama did a pretty good job of pressuring Sellers. They would have sacked Sellers a handful of times had he been a normal human being, but he's not. He's really hard to sack, even when you get pressure on him, because he's so big and strong and fast. Nussmeier's not. I predict another. I'm gonna call a 4-sack game, and if I'm wrong, it's 5. 4 or 5 sacks for Alabama this weekend because of LSU's tackle situation, their offensive line, the emergence of Pierre, and my willing or wishing LT Overton to greatness in his final month at Alabama.
You know, one of the things we've heard a lot about Yanze Pierre and just, when Quay Russaw comes back, you got to stick with Yanze. Yanze is doing great things. And I agree that Yanze looks amazing. I do want to point out, though, the pass rushing opportunities that Yanze Pierre has gotten relative to Quay Russaw is pretty unfair.
Yeah.
In the 8 games that Yanze Pierre has played in, he's had 145 pass rushing opportunities. That's an average of 18.1 per game. If you want to remove the Georgia game when Quay Russaw got injured and not include that because he only had a couple of pass rushing opportunities out of his 8 snaps before leaving. If you want to do that, that's totally fine. In the 3 games prior, he averaged 6.3. So Yanze Pierre was averaging 3 times as many pass rushing opportunities, and people are wondering why the pass rushing production for Yanze Pierre is on a completely different level than Quay Russaw. I'm not saying that Quay Russaw from a pure pass rushing perspective is as good or as effective as Yanze Pierre. I'm saying that it's closer than you think when you actually watch the win rate and watch how productive they are as pass rushers. So that's why I say Yanze doesn't do the things that Quay Russaw can do as far as being comfortable dropping into coverage, comfortable playing off the ball. So he hadn't had to do it as much. Now, granted, against South Carolina, he dropped quite a bit. By far the most that he's dropped this season with 15. Next highest was 12, but that's the only 2 times he's dropped more than 10 or more. So, it's a difference in how they're utilized at that Wolf position. I think it highlights both skill sets to an extent, but I think that is why you could also see Russaw still be a very effective player when he gets back as far as being an important piece to the defense. Wish he was going to be back this weekend. We did get an injury update on him. Doesn't sound like he's going to be back, but it sounds like he's getting close. And in the last show that we did, you mentioned that you didn't think that Quay was going to be back for LSU, but that you thought maybe he could be back pretty soon. I thought it was more so pushing into December. So I am pleasantly surprised to hear that he is maybe not too far away, because that is going to provide, if he can get back sooner rather than later, a massive boost to Alabama's rotation and their, front 7 as far as the defense is concerned.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma is possible. I might sit here and break news because I don't know that. I'm just from what I hear, and then adding a little wishing to it, I think Oklahoma is possible. Not writing it down just yet, but I do think it's possible. And boy, I see an ideal platoon situation there. I mean, it's an ideal situation when you can split snaps because it keeps them fresh. That's fine. But I see an even more ideal platoon situation. By that, I mean Russaw on first and second down and Pierre on third down. To me, makes all the sense in the world, but it probably makes too much sense. Probably them just more splitting snaps is what we'll see. They're both good players. I agree with you. Russaw's a better pass rusher than people know. I think he improved in that in the offseason. We just didn't get much of an opportunity to see it. And Pierre's been proving to be better against the run than we thought. They're both really good. And hey, you'd rather have 2 good ones than one. So I think it'll be big when they get back. This is a nice game for the secondary to step up, because if you're LSU, I agree they're going to make a concerted effort to run the ball, but their path to victory, the path to beating Alabama, is Nussmeier completing big play throws to Barry and Brown and Aaron Anderson. So that's going to pressure the Alabama defensive backs. A nice test for them. Brown and Anderson are good players. The tight end, Trey'Dez Green, if he's healthy, is a nightmare. I mean, this is a guy.
Is there concern with his health?
Well, he's missed time earlier this year, and I don't know if that means he's playing hurt or if he's completely fine. This is one of the injury reports. We'll get the first availability report on Wednesday. I'm busting to see this one. Not so much Alabama. We know what theirs is, most likely. But what does LSU's availability report look like Wednesday? But I'm going to assume for now that Green is healthy, and if so, he's 6'7", 240. Again, I mentioned this on the last show for my people that are close to LSU's program. They lose Mason Taylor, who was a high-value NFL prospect. I think he went day 2 to maybe the Jets. I don't remember, but I think Mason Taylor was a day 2 pick. They felt they were going to be even better with Green the next season. He just had some off-season injury things that's kind of limited his season, but it hasn't changed who he is. Real talented kid, a talented pass receiver that plays with a lot of leverage as a blocker. He's tough, but Barry Brown and Aaron Anderson outside, a high-quality duo. Seems like the SEC is full of good wide receiver units. LSU is no exception, and we all know Nussmeier's game pretty well. Easy to root for, the son of a former Alabama OC, Doug Nussmeier, who I think is still the OC of the New Orleans Saints. But Garrett, I do pull for him. I'm not going to pull for him Saturday, but I think he's been playing hurt. I mean, that's just when I watch Garrett this year and remember what he looked like last year, to me, doesn't look exactly like the same guy. And there was talk all summer that he has a knee condition. I don't know that it's true, but I don't doubt it. I think he's developed other injuries. He's been hit a lot. He just doesn't look the same player to me, Clint. And that's good news for Alabama. They're a tough opponent. I just want people to remember, when I think of LSU, this is what I think of: dudes. They got dudes every year. That has not changed. Brian Kelly did not get fired because he wasn't delivering enough dudes. He wasn't delivering championships, and that's why he got fired.
Man, Trey'Dez Green, to me, and when I talked about him yesterday, I don't know if you realize this, but he plays basketball, correct?
Yeah. You could figure just watching him play football that he plays basketball, because he just looks like it.
Very translatable skill set. You've seen tight ends have a lot of success, basketball players, those 6'7" power forwards or bigs down low that really don't have the size and length to make it to the NBA. You've seen a lot of them transition to having quite a bit of success as tight ends. Now, granted, he wasn't primarily a basketball player that made that transition. It's a little bit different. He was a highly regarded, recruit coming out of high school as a tight end, was a top 100 recruit, and he has certainly lived up to the billing. There's no doubt about it. But last year against Alabama, he had a massive block and then, took it down the court himself and threw it down, monster dunk. I mean, he didn't play a ton, but for a guy who was playing football and didn't arrive until late, for the basketball season, you just saw the athleticism on display there. I mean, he's got the downfield ball winning ability that you look for. He can really move for a guy who's 6'7", 245, and he's going to be a massive red zone threat. When you talk about like Texas A&M corner Will Lee, who I think is an NFL prospect, I watched when LSU was playing Texas A&M. I saw Trey'Dez Green absolutely bully him down on the line of scrimmage on a fade for a touchdown. And so he's going to be a problem, whether it be in the red zone or really, he's becoming a featured piece. And he spends about 55% of his time, despite the fact that he's a tight end, 55% of the time is a slot. So he's essentially a big slot, plays about 8%, 29% of his snaps in line. So he's either going to be out wide or he's going to be in the slot. You've got other guys who are going to be, Aaron Anderson's primarily a slot. Like you said, Barry Brown is certainly a guy who plays, is a big-time player, or was expected to be a big-time player for them on the outside. Xavier Thomas, the former Mississippi State transfer, he's going to, play a lot outside, but then he's also going to kind of get the Jeremy Bernard Z treatment, where they put him in motion a lot. They put him in the backfield, obviously not the same exact skill set as Jeremy Bernard, but that's kind of the usage there. And then Nick Anderson is another long guy that I really thought was going to be a much bigger piece of their offense. Now, granted, what Green has given them from a size perspective really fills that element, and I just don't think Anderson has been effective enough. But he plays over 80% of his snaps outside. You're going to get Kyle Parker, who's got about 2/3 of his snaps inside, 1/3 outside. So they've got, quite a few dudes that they're going to highlight or try to utilize. But Trey'Dez Green, how Alabama matches up with him is going to be so critical, in my opinion, because, I think Aaron Anderson is a great football player, going to be playing on Sundays, no doubt about it. But to me, Trey'Dez Green is the one that is like the unicorn, rare type of player that you've got to figure out. I mean, do you have the dude that can match the athleticism and the size? Alabama, it would be nice on those snaps where he is playing outside if maybe you can get a Dijon Lee on him. I think he can match that athleticism size perspective. Now, granted, Green's got a lot more on the experience front. Maybe that plays into his advantage. But, with him playing over half of his snaps in the slot, Deshaun Jones, Red Morgan, are they going to – as good as Red Morgan has played, Are you really putting 185-pound Red Morgan,
Doesn't feel like a good
5'11"?
matchup.
No, it does not. And so but who, I mean,
Yeah.
Zay Mincy, Bray Hubbard, Keon Sabb, you were talking about him. Like, it's going to be based off of where he lines up. It's going to be a committee approach. They're not going to have somebody just shadow him, but their success against Trey'Dez Green, I feel like, is going to be a critical piece in determining how much success LSU's offense has, because if they can feature him and consistently, convert and move the football down the field, then they could have some success against Alabama's defense as far as scoring points.
Yeah, I'm not going to comp him to these guys because it's so unfair and ridiculous, but just saying, as a final thing on Trey'Dez, I mean, here's a couple of NFL tight ends that were extensive college basketball players. Jimmy Graham, Antonio Gates. Yep. That's what he's like. I mean, that's the kind of, I think he has a ceiling comparable to those guys. So there's no crazy matchup there that's good. Now, I think Alabama matches up as well with him as anyone else. I mean, no one else, no one in the SEC has a 6'7", 240-pound defensive back that excels in man-to-man coverage. That person doesn't exist. But Dijon Lee's got some length. Zabian's got some length. Deshaun Jones, pretty physical for a natural cornerback who's playing that slot. Deshaun played all corner at Wake Forest, been a slot nickel guy for us here. Pretty physical. Keon Sabb and Bray Hubbard. I think Bray Hubbard, he's going to be on Trey'Dez quite a bit, and that's fine. I think Bray gives you a chance, but Barry Brown and Aaron Anderson, good players. Not taking anything away from them. They're good, but we see them most weeks. This is the SEC. Everybody's got good receivers in this league. We haven't played somebody with bad receivers yet. Everybody's at least got a couple that are good. I think Barry Brown and Aaron Anderson are good. They'll cause us some issues. They're going to get open and catch some balls. But we see them most weeks. You don't see a guy like Green. That's a guy that's unique. You call him a unicorn. I like that. We won't. He's as tough a matchup as you'll get in playing 12 football games. But overall, I like where the defense is. I'll be disappointed if we become the first defense to really get boat raced by the LSU offense. It hasn't happened for them in 8 games. They did change the coach, but they didn't change the personnel. I don't think Nussmeier is any healthier than he's been. I don't think that they'll, just because I think Frank Wilson wants to run the ball, I don't think they're going to bust Alabama for 200 yards on the ground. I just don't see it. I think in the end, Clint, Alabama's defense gives the team a great chance to win the game this weekend. I'm going to predict LSU scores around 17-20, 17-21, which is actually not terrible for LSU against a defense like Alabama. But if you hold them to 17 or 21, that's the defense doing its job and giving the Alabama offense a good chance to win the game.
Yeah, that makes sense to me for sure. And a guy like Bray Hubbard, in some ways, I think that just the freak athlete that Trey'Dez Green is, I'm not saying that Bray Hubbard matches up well against him, but I will say, if you're putting Bray in a man-to-man coverage situation, I would rather it be against Trey'Dez Green than Aaron Anderson, because Anderson and the craftiness in which he plays the game, it's very Latsier Brooks-esque. And those are the types of guys that when you get Bray, I mean, in practice, we saw Latsier just dicing up Bray. And granted, that's not really Bray's strength at all, man-to-man coverage in general. But I would tend to rather see him against the bigger body guy, because I think that while you're not going to fully match the size, I think from a straight play strength standpoint, I think from a physicality standpoint, I think Bray could do pretty well against him. Now, and one of the other things that I did want to mention, because Kane Womack yesterday during his press conference, he was talking up how much he enjoys seeing Tim Keenan play as a zero technique nose, his ability to two gap and kind of anchor and hold the point of attack. I don't know how much you do this. They're going to match personnel. So they're not going to go 3-4 based off of just, in today's college football, even if you were 3-4 based, when you're going against 11 personnel, you're getting in a 4-2-5 unless you go like a 3-3-5 or something like that. You're not going 3-4 against 11 personnel. It's pretty pointless. But I will say LSU, I want to say about 20 20 to 25% of the time they do go 12 personnel. Now, granted, one of those is Trades Green, who's essentially just another receiver. So is it a real true run heavy 12 personnel? That can be argued, but maybe you do whenever Quay gets back, that's something to keep an eye on as Alabama moves forward. If they're going against a heavy 12 personnel type of offense, with the fact that Tim's a great as a zero, and you're trying to get maybe Yanze and Quay on the field at the same time, 2, 3, 4 outside linebackers. LT Overton is certainly big enough and good enough to be kind of that 5-4, 4-eye, 3-4 defensive end. I personally would like that. And I think James Smith could definitely handle, which he does already, and Edric Hill. They go a lot of 3-man fronts anyways. It's just maybe you can get more 3-4 looks on the field, maybe get Quay and Yanze on the field at the same time. I think that would be great. But either way, they need to figure out some creative ways to get both those guys on the field once Quay is healthy. Before this game, Yanze is going to be important. LT is going to be important. How they match up, anybody that's lining up against Trades Green, going to be important. Don't want to ignore Aaron Anderson. Obviously, he is, from a target share standpoint, I don't think he's quite on the level of Berrien Brown. But I think Aaron Anderson has a lot of ability and love his skill set overall. They have dudes in the passing game. How you mitigate that or stop that is you apply pressure on the quarterback where he can't get him the football. And then granted, Nussmeier is a quick processor. He's going to get the football out of his hands. I think that's where he thrives in a lot of ways. But you've got to put him in those situations where he can't as much as you possibly can. Got to stop the run. Got to do all that. And, I do think there will be a newfound commitment to the run game, so that is definitely something for fans to keep an eye on. Jimmy, do you have anything else about Alabama's defense going against LSU's offense before we hop to the other side?
Nope. Like I said, 4 or 5 sack game coming up, loading for Alabama Saturday, and let's get Keon Keeley another one. How about Keon Keeley with a sack on Saturday? I won't be surprised at all.
I would absolutely love it. I mean, he's clearly trending in the right direction. Still want to see him get a little bit more technically sound. Still has some stuff to clean up, but he's doing a good job. So definitely think he's earned more opportunities moving forward. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody else. Get on over to roback.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order. It's right here on the holidays. Certainly get them Roback opportunities as they're here. They got a great black hoodie. And if you want to show support for Kalen DeBoer and his black hoodie, get in on that train by getting on over to roback.com. Appreciate you, Jimmy, and we will talk to you guys soon.